We're going to be moving to the mock food inspection visit in just a minute. I'm supposed to be talking about debriefing. We're actually going to debrief the food inspection thing that we look at here, so we can talk some about debriefing as we do that. But I think you can already tell that it will be important for you to meet with each other and with your site coordinator to talk about this. I got to tell you, when Michelle and Corbett came back, they were like two kids who had just seen the same movie and wanted to compare notes and talk with each other about it. Tell us what they saw, and you likely will feel that way too. You are absolutely free to talk with each other about it. The trouble is, you're not absolutely free to talk with your spouse about it. You're not absolutely free to talk with your friends about it. And that's part of what Eileen will be sharing with you around professional behavior. That's why there needs to be a formal debriefing time where you can talk this through, because you may see some things that bother you, disturb you, make you curious, excite you, whatever. But you need to be cautious. This is a professional situation you're in. While the record of the visit is public information, you're privy to seeing things that aren't necessarily public information, and you need to recognize that that's part of being a professional. So we will come back to that. The reason that I bring it up is because it's the solution to that is to be able to debrief with each other. Now, you can do that outside of the formal debriefing session because you're, there are multiple people at your site who are participating in this, and you're sharing the same basic experience. There is no problem talking with others on the research team about this at any time, as long as you're not in a situation of being overheard by others. So you don't need to restrict yourself to the debriefing time that is scheduled, but keep it to people who are on the research team, and that could be fellow student observers, or it could be your site coordinator, and certainly dropping us an email or giving us a call is another option if you're not feeling satisfaction with the briefing you're doing at your local site. Okay, so that's it for debriefing for right now. Are we scheduled for a little break before we go to?
I think we probably should. We're not, but I think we should take a little break. Then we'll come back and do the video.
So let's talk gestalt first. How was that different or the same as what you expected a food service inspection to be? Pretty, it didn't surprise you the way he approached things at all? Was there anything that surprised you?
I have a question about the facility. They don't have anybody eating there. Is there, would they, if it was a restaurant, would they have inspected where people sit and eat?
Eileen.
So because this was a videotape, I will tell you this now, it was videotape at Tri-Cities Culinary Arts School. So there's no patron area, there's no seating area, and that's why we didn't inspect the restroom either, because it's not really, they're not serving food to anyone. That's what that is. But other than that, I think it's pretty fine.
So restrooms not being inspected probably were related to that same issue as well. So a little bit of an artificial atmosphere, but can understand why they chose to create this video in that atmosphere. Appeared to be a pretty calm and controlled atmosphere, and it was clear who was boss there, and none of the swearing or throwing things that you see on the television chef shows. Any other big picture thoughts before we start looking at the form itself? Do you know?
thought the PIC would be with him almost the whole time,
Uh-huh.
but there's a lot of conversations on his own, walking around, and he talks to the other employees more
Right.
than the chef, so I thought that was interesting. I didn't expect that.
Right, and I think that will be different at different restaurants and with different inspectors. You know, there are a number of little tweaks that I saw to the form myself, even going through this, like putting an on and off about whether the PIC accompanies him. You know, it wasn't no or yes, it was on and off. He was with him. So we'll add a category like that to that. You know, we did have something about whether he was talking with other employees. I think that there are some restaurants where the PIC doesn't want them talking to other employees, and that's when the PIC goes with them almost to make sure that they don't either look somewhere or talk to someone that they don't want them to, perhaps. So that was perhaps a little different. One of the things that I won't say surprised me, but I was interested to see how much time he just stood watching, you know, observing calmly, and you could almost see the wheels turning in his mind about different things that he was observing while he was doing that, and that's the mind reading that we can't do. You know, I thought that showed a careful, measured approach, that he was spending that much time just in quiet observation during the session. Chris?
Along that line, it seemed to me that we got a lot more time to make comments on our form. I worked in the meat department at Berkeley for 3 years, and this was a lot slower than the way they went through. And it seems like, you know, that was easier for me to write down everything as we were going. But real world situation might be faster.
Yeah, I think you'll find that both ways. I mean, I think you'll find faster situations, but there are some that are really time consuming and they go really slowly because there's a lot that they're doing. You know, I think that in a smaller kitchen, it probably would have gone more quickly as well. The meat department probably is smaller than this space was, so that might have something to do with why it might go more quickly there as well. I think there'll be a fair amount of variation, and that's part of what we'll be looking at. Though in a less artificial setting, you know, we would have a sense of how many people they were serving, and that might correlate with how much time was being spent during the inspections. Presumably, if they're serving more people, it's a bigger kitchen that takes longer to inspect, and if they're a smaller restaurant, it's going to go more quickly. One of the things that I keep meaning to bring up and hasn't come up explicitly is that there are some people, and it may actually be technically correct to differentiate between food service establishments and food service operations. We're not really doing that in this study. So a gas station that sells food isn't any, we're not calling that a food service operation, which some would, as opposed to a food service establishment that prepares its own food. We're more specific than that, asking you to say what kind of establishment it is, and we can actually cluster them later into FSCs or FSOs if we choose to do that. We will look at them by categories later, but if we did it as FSE or FSO, that would offer us less information, and we'd never be able to tease that out, whereas if we ask the specific information, we can cluster it later if we want to. But you may hear your sanitarians talking about FSOs, food service operations, rather than FSEs, and generally the difference is that the food service establishments prepare their own food. Food service operations, maybe the majority of food is pre-prepared at the FSOs. Okay. So any other comments before we start looking at the form more specifically? right. We're going to probably take about 30 minutes or so to step through this, and we'll just compare notes on what people got. We didn't get anything about risk category or seating capacity. How would you have categorized this restaurant or this establishment?
The private university.
No, I put private. Again, we didn't literally know that it was a teaching establishment, and I thought that private restaurant probably fit best what we were seeing there. I invite anybody to disagree with me on these. I don't have the right answers. I just have my answers, and I'm willing to set the same. PIC was pretty easy. Male. How old did you think he was? 31 to 40 is what I put. Some general agreement there. He explicitly said he was the manager. You know, it's nice to see these things come out explicitly so you can fill them out. Excellent facility with English, both spoken and apparently understood. Anyone have anything different on that? I didn't. Oh, he did address him by name. Yep.
I said no, because I thought
Oops, I'm not supposed to change it. My bad. Okay.
So chef is the appropriate name.
What's that?
Chef is the appropriate name.
First name or last name, it's we ask here, first name, last name, doesn't address by name. I'll just comment briefly that we did this with patients in the doctor's office with one of our studies, and we're looking to see whether patients preferred to be called by their first name or last name, and there actually was no difference in their satisfaction with the visit, whether they called them by the first name or last name. But if they didn't call them by name at all, there was a much lower level of satisfaction with the visit. So it was actually sort of interesting.
You could put title instead of first, you know, and yeah, in addition to that. You could, because chef, you know, is
I think he yeah.
Yeah.
Good point. Okay. Did he shake hands?
Yes.
Wash hands?
Yes.
In fact, he did it twice, didn't he? And I think we'll...
Very
Yeah.
What's
One
that?
time he used just, he washed them twice.
He was actually washing his equipment that time, the foam stuff, and might add a question about cleaning equipment. Did the sanitarian talk or interact exclusively with the PIC? That was an obvious no. How many employees did you say that he talked with?
I said no.
One of the things that I'm clearly intending to do after sitting through this one is making instructions to stop counting when you reach 5. So 5 or more. Once you reach 5, you don't have to keep ticking away, and that'll make it substantially easier. Just for your information, that statistically, we may do nothing more than yes or no, but we have the option of doing more than yes or no if we've got some semblance of numbers here. And he did a lot of things 5 or more times, at least on my checklist. You know, I suspect we'll have moderate level of concordance there. So we'll make that change to make it clear that once you reach 5, you don't have to keep counting. How much time did the sanitarian speak with the PIC in preparation for the inspection? 1 to 5? Yeah. And during the interaction, and just to be clear, that doesn't mean the entering interaction, during all interaction with PIC. What did you see? Did you see either admit uncertainty? Once for the PIC. I got that as well.
You didn't know about the towels, and you didn't know about the water on the. Yeah. The towels and the drinks.
Oh, I forgot the towels. Yeah. It's not changed, but the drains and the towels, we can specifically remember those 2 times that the PIC admitted uncertainty. The sanitarian, I don't recall the sanitarian admitting uncertainty.
One time.
One time?
I got one.
Do you remember what it was?
Yeah, the pipeline was saying.
Oh, the second one.
And I think it would be rhetorical, not really saying, I don't know. But unfortunately, you can't take it as that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right, that we should take it literally, and I think that's one where we'll have some different responses. I think you're right, literally he did, but it was easy to miss because it was, I think, more rhetorical. Use of humor, did the PIC use humor?
Yes.
And how about the sanitarian? Did you get more than once for sanitarian?
Yeah.
The only thing I would say is that be careful in grading this one because I think there were several times that he tried to use humor but nobody laughed. And the criteria isn't whether he tries to be funny, but whether he evokes a laugh from the people that he's working with. I just saw once where I saw someone laugh as a result of, but it's okay. Any issue with the PIC interrupting the sanitarian or the sanitarian interrupting the PIC?
No. PIC
I saw one.
Okay. And use of unexplained jargon. If any time, it might have been when he was talking about the pipe, but the chef clearly understood what he was saying. I didn't understand what he was saying, but the chef clearly did. He went straight to it, so I agree. Argumentation or conflict? Not at all. Positive feedback? More than once? Negative feedback?
I have a question.
Yes.
He gave like positive criticism when he was going around. It was positive. He never was.
Right.
Is that considered?
Right. That's. I'm glad that you brought that up because I was going to. Negative feedback is intended to be criticism that is expressed in a negative manner. So it's correct to say that he didn't do that. The thing that would count that would be gives advice or directions about a problem during the inspection, and he did that on a number of occasions. That is simply educating and doing his job. I think the question is, and we'll talk about this tomorrow, whether we ought to move an item like that up next to this one about the negative feedback. That might be a better place to have that than down below. Yes, Julie?
Just about that, I mean, it would be useful up there, but it kind of gives some indication if you put it down here and you get the number of times about like on the job education. So it might be useful to just keep it or
yeah,
there.
I thought the amount of on-the-spot education he did was impressive, and you may be right that it may be worth it to have more quantification of that than just the more than once that's up above. So we'll discuss that, and good feedback on that. I won't even ask if punitive action was threatened. Clearly not. Did the sanitarian discuss the results of the inspection privately with PIC?
No.
You didn't think it was private? Okay.
Yeah, I think it was.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds like there's a little bit of
I mean, they just like look down and
little bit of difference of opinion on that one. I again don't think there's necessarily a right or wrong answer. It didn't appear that there were other folks around that could overhear, but You know, they clearly didn't go into an office. There didn't appear to be an office to go into. You know, they didn't go in the refrigerator and shut the door behind them. But he clearly wasn't in the middle of the kitchen when he talked about it either. So we may want to include one additional option there when it isn't entirely clear how private it is, a middle option.
Well, that might be
There's
so
that
that's
private
when
space where.
Sorry, a couple of people are talking at the same time. Yes.
Oh, I was just saying there is a qualification on that, discussing the inspection privately underneath. I thought that was pretty adequate. Private place would include a space where they're unlikely to be overheard, but it seemed obvious they were both inside, private. I mean,
Okay. So you felt that he did discuss it privately? That was my impression too, that he pulled him to the side, made a point of not being in the middle of things when it was done. You know, again, maybe some disagreement on that, and we'll see how it comes out and see whether adding an additional option would be worthwhile.
I don't know that it would.
The value of adding an additional option is that chances are if we offered a middle option there, everybody would have said a middle option or yes, and then we wouldn't be saying yes or no. We'd categorize it yes or semi-private, something like that. That would be a more positive way to express it than having to choose yes or no. So we'll talk about it. We don't need to decide now. Yes?
I was just going to say it might be easier to observe to get that question, you know, be more consistent on that question if you're there observing rather than in the video.
Right. And I do think that that's a very valid point, that one might have been clearer if you were there in person, because you would be looking around yourself to see whether there was anyone else that was over here. All right. No interruptions during the discussion of results. No favors offered. And there are a couple of spots where we need to put not applicable as well, so that it's clear that you answered the question, not that you just left it blank. Janelle?
I was going to say about the question about discussing the results. Maybe that would be helpful to put that by the other questions about after the inspection, so it's clear that you're talking about things that happen at the end of the inspection.
Good suggestion. Thank you. You know, it was interesting because I don't think he had any intent toward this at all, but when he was talking about how good things looked, it was almost like he was asking for something. I don't think he was in any way. I think he was just being his positive self, but you know, it wouldn't surprise me if there are places he goes to and acts that positive that people would say, would you like a taste? It'll be interesting to see what we see with that. And, you know, chances are he would say, oh, no. It seemed interesting to me that at times, if I was doing it, I might have said, would you like a taste? All right. Let's see. We're to the top of our physical inspection list now. Let me just make a couple of comments on that. The first is that these sanitarians are inspected by the state for the content of what they do during their inspections. This is frankly somewhat less important. I don't mean to not pay attention to it, but some of the interaction things, they're really not assessed for. They're you know, checked on whether they do the technical aspects of the inspection that are required. We don't have all of the technical aspects listed, and we've told you the reason why previously, but the bottom line is that we're not so concerned that we have the exact number of instances when something happened here so much as a gestalt of that they're doing it rarely or they're doing it often. And whether we have the exact same numbers or not, we probably don't, but if we were to cluster the numbers, which we definitely will do, chances are we would have pretty close concurrence. So let's just look through a couple of these rather than all of these. I will, well, let me just start with cupboards. What did people say to that?
I had a question about
Yeah, I have a question. I run on the dry door.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
You know, I think we're going to change that to cupboards or shelves because yeah. So I think we need to clarify that a bit. I think he meant the intent of that, but they didn't have things in closed cupboards. They had them on shelves. There's nothing wrong with having them on shelves, and if we did cupboards, he had more than, or sorry, shelves or cupboards, he had more than 5 times that he checked that. Countertops, I couldn't tell whether he was checking countertops or not.
cutting boards.
Countertops and food preparation were like the same, so I didn't know.
Yeah.
But we also have preparation area, so pretty much like we have countertop and we have preparation area.
Countertop would be like a basket place and we have a counter.
Yeah.
Or even an expo. Like,
And it's not like he took a glove and checked to see if there was dirt on his fingertip. I don't know what I expected there, but I wonder how useful that would be. Did he check the sink? Yeah, including the drains. Preparation area, I think he clearly checked more than 5 times different preparation areas. The cooking area, stove and oven, a little less often with that, wasn't it? Okay.
So you got the microwave, the oven.
Oh, and you put it on the microwave. I didn't think of that. Yeah. Did you check the trash?
yeah. The outside.
At least passively, yes. In fact, he made a note that there weren't enough trash cans. So, you know, I would say that's good evidence that he checked the trash. Water temperature. Check labels on food items.
I have a question about the water temperature. Is that running water or is that standing water? Or is it all water?
It's a good question because the dishwasher probably should be a different question than water temperature, and he clearly did check the temperature in the dishwasher.
The dishwasher is put under equipment. Like
Sorry?
the dishwasher, I put that under equipment, like we do the fridge for the temperature
Right.
and that kind of thing.
Right. We clearly need to take thermometer in the fridge off of the equipment because it implies that we only want you to comment on refrigerators. So we either need to separate different kinds of equipment out or just have one question about whether he checks equipment. We'll talk that over and make a decision about how we want to handle that. I will say I was impressed by how often he squatted and bent over. He got down into it. Yeah, definitely. That was one of those quick counting ones. And looking, and I'll actually add the word under or behind because he did a lot of looking behind, which seemed very thorough and appropriate. Did not use a ladder. No need for him to, but didn't. Temperature of hot and cold foods, more than 5 I got. Advice or direction about a problem during the inspection. How many did people count there?
I got 4.
I got 4 too. Menu, again, was probably an artificial factor of the teaching environment. I didn't know what he was doing with the pH of the different water and areas that he was doing. Do you know what that involved?
It's the standing tab.
It's your
To make
concentration
sure
of
that they're,
sanitation.
What's that?
it's the standing tab, the tab, like the sanitation, to make sure that it's the concentration is
Okay.
efficient or effective, sorry.
Okay.
I guess. I don't know what is efficient or effective and what's not. I don't know what he's actually doing.
We'll follow up with our sanitarian friends on that one and see whether that's something that would be worth adding to the list. He seemed to make a point of checking pH of at least a couple of different containers or water sources. I also wondered whether checking containers is something that should be added, and I actually think using a flashlight probably should be added. I was impressed that he had that flashlight to look and make sure that he was seeing what he needed to see, and my guess is that not all sanitarians use that, so I think that is something that we'll add to the list. Any other comments on our physical inspection checklist, Janelle?
A couple of things that might not be as common that he checked. There's a first aid kit that he checked, and then
I'm sorry, can you speak up?
he checked the first aid kit, which I
Oh,
don't
yeah.
know if it was
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
but then he also checked that meat slicer, which I thought he might be checking both for safety and cleanliness. So I don't know if that should be under equipment, or I wasn't sure where to put that from.
Yeah, I put it under equipment, but that was when I was also thinking we need to clarify what we mean by equipment, so we'll work on that. Yes?
Yeah, I think food storage should be more explicit than like labels on the food. That he discussed with the chef where the chicken would go and the beef would go.
Yeah, that
looking at the containers and all that.
right. That was clearly a cross-contamination control measure, and that was an explicit comment that he made there. But food storage, again, we'll talk that through and see if we can find a clearer way to come up with that. We have equipment check in both of these places, and I'm not sure we need it in both places. Thermometer calibration, I think that he did do that. He measured the temperature inside the refrigerator and looked at the thermometer in the refrigerator, so I put apparently because he didn't make a specific comment about it.
Commented on the temperature in the freezer for the chicken and I'm sorry, I speak quietly. He commented on the temperature in the freezer for the chicken and the whatever meat he was supposed to be keeping it away from. He's like 155 here, or not 155, but the
Great.
temperature.
You're right, I remember now that he did
Another
that.
thing that he checked was all the rubber hinges of the refrigerator.
Yes, I thought that was impressive that he was checking that rubber seal on there. I think he made a point of doing it so we could see it too. That was good. Food protection gets at, I think, some of the stuff that Chris was talking about earlier. I said yes and comment made there. Food holding time, temperature, I think he made comments there as well. Sanitation, I think I would interpret the temperature in the dishwasher as that, and that he made a comment there. The hand washing issue came up at the end of employees. Cleanliness of cloth and surfaces, I took the side towels or whatever he called them to be a comment made on that. Non-contact surface cleanliness, I don't even know what it is. But, yeah.
I wasn't sure.
Floor, ceiling.
Yeah. Do you know what that's referring to, Apurva? Non-contact surfaces?
Yeah, that's exactly what
Okay.
Kevin and I were talking about. The floors and actually it's mostly the ceilings, and also I think if I remember correctly, when I shadowed Marty, he also mentioned something about
Okay, so I put no or not explicitly for that because I couldn't see him do that specifically. Date marking or date stamping on prepared foods, I put apparently. He seems to be checking that. Presence of vermin and excrement, I put apparently. Looking behind things, I think was that.
For this food stamping, the date marking and stuff, I thought he talked about that with him, that the labels and stuff were okay at the end.
Okay,
Is that
great.
the same? Is that the same thing? I mean, it is slightly different because this is talking about prepared foods, but he did discuss food labels.
Right, and the answer to that question will depend on our statistical analysis. Basically, we're going to have to figure out whether we're accurate enough so that we can look at apparently and comment made as different categories, or whether we're going to group those as one category as opposed to no, which is the comment that I was talking about 3 answer choices for the other one. It gives us an opportunity to give the benefit of doubt, if you will, to really say what we think is the case rather than just saying no because we couldn't prove it through a comment. My guess is that we'll be pretty close with the apparentlys, but if you add the apparentlys and comment made together and cluster those as one versus no, that the concordance will be quite good. Cross-contamination, did everybody catch that with the drip down from above? May have been, in fact, more than one of those, but clearly that was. Disposal of waste. What was your take there? Yep, I agree. Cleaning solutions, he looked at those as well. And the restroom just didn't come up, so that was all no. Tobacco did not come up, or clean indoor air. No spoiled or bad food stuff that needed to be discarded. And after the inspection, what was your take? Clear feedback and assessment. Discuss improvement plan. Confirmed understanding. Offers education. Elicit questions.
Say he could send somebody in and teach the students.
I'm sorry?
At the end, I thought he did say he could send somebody in to help educate the students.
Oh, yeah, we did.
Right.
Yeah.
And then,
Did it surprise anyone else that he didn't take any notes during the inspection? I think that's a good thing to add to the list, is just ask whether they make notes or notations. My guess is that a really skilled sanitarian doesn't need to do it because he's done it so often that he's got a checklist in his head. However, research in other fields demonstrates that checklists work better than keeping things in your head. So I think it's worth just seeing what number of sanitarians and what level of experience they have for taking notes or not taking notes. So I think we'll add that one to our list. He also asked a question on a number of occasions that we might add to the list about where did you get your food, right? And I think that that's a good question, an appropriate question, and if that's asked on a consistent basis in a high standard kind of inspection, probably worth adding to the list of things that we ask about. All right, moving on to violations. There were no citations, so there wasn't a violation that was dealt with during the inspection. Is that, do people agree with that? Yeah.
There was one that was...
There was not.
There was, okay.
Oh, I didn't see one.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure.
He made suggestions, but I don't think they were a level of violation.
I don't know, yeah, I assumed that was, like, the things that he was asking them to kind of just, like, change.
Right. Well, we have the opportunity for verbal warning right below that. And he did give a number of verbal warnings. How many did you guys count? Four. I said four too. So the same general vicinity. We might even have had a different four, but that's what I counted. No voices raised in anger from either. PIC, I rated as cooperative and engaged. And I know he thanked, the sanitarian thanked the PIC. I think the PIC thanked him as well. I will just comment briefly that we did this in our study of observational study of physician interaction. Ask at the end of the visit, did the patient thank the doctor? And it was a remarkably strong proxy for patient satisfaction if the patient actually thanked the doctor at the end of the visit or not. It'll be interesting. to do the pre and post, a mock interview pre and post. I'm going to let you all tell me whether you think that's worth doing. What we've done is mock up a couple of different sanitarian profiles, and you would be interviewing someone, one of your peers, who has that profile in front of them for both the pre-inspection protocol and the post-inspection protocol, not knowing what happened in between. That's not part of the scenario we gave. It's just who the inspector is that we've given. I personally don't think that those interviews are going to be that difficult, so I'm not sure that it's worth the time to do that, particularly given how interactive you all have been about this. I think we built that in because we weren't sure you'd be interactive, and that would have made you interact at least with each other. So I'm seeing a lot of nods about not feeling the need to do that today, and I'm sure nobody would mind getting out a little bit earlier than intended. We're not quite done. We do want to just reinforce some of the things that have come up as a theme through this session around professional behavior and issues where you may have be uncomfortable about certain things. I'm going to say one thing before turning it over to Eileen, and that relates to the next slide, in fact, I believe. And that is that I do encourage each of you to set up an interview time with the health director of the local health department that you'll be functioning in, and to talk with him about the project in general, to talk with him about what you're personally hoping to get out of your experience with the project. There may be a few questions on the local health department profile that you can clarify with him rather than getting it from public sources. I think it's just a nice professional way to enter into it, and whether it's actually the health director, the director of environmental health, or both, you could certainly choose to do both. I think, again, it's simply a nice professional approach and professional courtesy almost to talk with them. Now, they're busy, they're very busy, but they also are committing to this project and want to see it succeed. And I think in particular, having talked with the health director prior to the project starting would mean that if any problem came up during the project, it would be much easier to approach him or her at a later time to talk about barrier you're experiencing or inconsistency or unreliability of the sanitarian. You come out and he's not available, those kinds of things. So I strongly encourage you to make a contact with the health director, environmental health director, or both, in addition to working with the sanitarians. Most of you will work with more than one sanitarian that agree to be involved in the study. Just to clarify, the intent would be for you to have, most of the time, you'll want one half-day session where you go out. And the hope is that you'll be able to work with multiple sanitarians who've agreed to participate on that half day. So you're not always working with the same person, but chances are you'll work with a cohort of maybe 3 to maybe 5 in a large health department sanitarians, and get to know all of them over the course of the study. In smaller health departments, you'll be working with 1 or 2 sanitarians. Again, finding a time that's mutually agreeable, that fits your student schedule, and is a time that they're going to be out doing inspections anyway, is the ideal that we're looking for. Yes?
The forms that we have to use to complete during the inspection, are we responsible for making copies of what you've given us, or will school?
No, we'll provide those, and there are still going to be changes on that, so don't use the forms that we're giving you.
we'll definitely supply probably electronic copy to your site coordinator, and your site coordinator will get you the hard copy that you need for your sessions. Yes.
Will there be several of us working within the same health department?
Generally not. Generally, it'll be one person per health department, but we do plan to have crossovers, and that will help us with our integrator reliability checking. We've already mentioned that we're going to begin with some observation in pairs, and we may, once every 3 months or so, go back to observation in pairs to see whether there's a change in integrator reliability as people become more experienced with one over time.
That may be true as well when when there's changeover with observers.
Exactly.
So, as particularly when the semesters change, if you're committed to the full 9 months, you might end up paired with somebody who's just come on the project to do the integrator reliability check.
Exactly.
Any questions?
I was going to ask, were we just dealing with Cuyahoga County strictly?
Oh, no, not at all. Yes, we're just dealing with Cuyahoga County.
No.
It'll be local
just
to
to
your
clarify, the glory of this project, as far as I'm concerned, is that all 7 academic programs in the state have agreed to participate, which means we've got Cincinnati covered by University of Cincinnati, Central Ohio covered by Ohio State, Wright State's covering Western and Northwestern. We've got Toledo. We've got Northeast Ohio oversaturated, but we talked with our peers at KSU and Neomed and decided which health departments, which academic institutions are partnering with for this project. So your site supervisors know the health departments they're recruiting to involvement. The question did come up earlier. You will not get your health department today. That's a decision between you and your site supervisor. We don't have any influence on which local health department you work with unless you hear the case. That's a discussion you'll have sometime in the next couple of weeks, probably, with your site supervisor at your place.
Nor will we have, will we have any authority to say which sanitarian we will be shadowing? Because Mohammed just asked me that question, because he apparently knows a sanitarian even if he wanted to shadow. So we can't do that. We cannot assign a particular sanitarian, so it has to be voluntary and it has to come from the sanitarian side. Part of our mission is project has to be from the sanitarian side.
Right, and in fact, the site supervisors are aware, for example, that they have to be the ones who are recruiting, and they may recruit you to help them with it. But the health director can't be the ones, or the environmental health director can't be the one who chooses which sanitarians, or tries to, or we don't want them trying to pressure sanitarians to participate. So they're not involved in recruitment. Each of the health departments will have a little session where folks from your study team will go out and explain what the project is and ask for volunteer participation. They'll have to sign a consent form. The PICs do not need to sign a consent form. You don't need to consent each visit. We're consenting the registered sanitarians that are involved. There may be new registered sanitarians that get on board that weren't involved earlier because somebody drops out, but each RS only needs to be consented one time. When we move into the outbreak component, the case study component of the study, we may need to consent additional health department personnel. We certainly, if we would be getting involved with traceback contacts, would need to consent the traceback contacts. That may be able to be a verbal consent if it's a phone interview that we're listening in. You'll get more information about that as we move forward. Right now, it's irrelevant. And at the time that the RS agrees to participate, they'll do the consent form and the RS profile, and we'll have those on file. The intent would be to create
a printout of the RS profile that you could use to help know the person that you're working with, though that will obviously be treated as confidential information as well. But you'll know how long they've been a sanitarian, you'll know, if we won't have all of the information, attitudes, for example, we're not going to tell you, but the basics of how long they've been in public health, how long they've been at that health department, that kind of thing, will provide you with that information. All right, Eileen.
Okay, so I'm just going to go through a couple of things about professionalism, and I know it's sort of annoying for most people, and it's very intuitive. This is based on feedback that when we talk to environmental health directors and registered sanitarians, these are some of the things that they've run into in the past with people who have shadowed. So nobody's been doing the observations, but they very frequently have, anywhere from high school through college, students shadowing them, and these are some of the things they've run into. So, attire, no jeans or shorts or really short skirts, sleeveless shirts, t-shirts, sandals, open-toe shoes, flip-flops. Some of this is just looking professional and you're representing the health department and your university, and some of it is truly a safety concern, especially the open-toe shoes. So it's not clean to have your bare feet in a kitchen, and it's also not safe for you. I would say in most places, if you needed a recommendation, it would be business casual, but if your local health department that you're working with has a specific dress code, please follow it. You can see how Paul was dressed during the inspection. Just to give you an idea, he had a polo that said Cuyahoga County Board of Health. But, you know, it's going to vary a little bit. And we have to touch on social media. A lot of this project, which is kind of sensitive, you know, we looked at a super clean kitchen that I think most people rated that they would go to. That is not going to be the case everywhere you go. It cannot show up on Facebook or Twitter or on a blog or checking in. I don't know what exactly it is when you check in places like Facebook and stuff. I see people doing that. And I'm saying it because I think for a lot of people it's just part of your day, and so you're gonna talk about it and write about it, and just to make a special note to yourself not to do that. And Dr. Frank talked about the debriefing process, and that's part of why we're building it in, because you can't debrief it in some of the places you might be debriefing parts of your life. Okay, and we just want to talk a little bit about...
Can I just add one thing about that? No pictures at all. Don't take pictures of things you see because it looks interesting or because it looks gross. You know, that fish head might have looked interesting. You might have wanted to take a camera phone picture. Phone camera picture. Don't do it.
Even if the sanitarian does, don't do it.
Right. That's not your role. You're just there to observe the sanitarian.
This could have legal implications, so please.
So just in communicating, so we just want to make sure there's strong positive communication with the local health department. So, you know, write professional emails, not the shorthand texting language when you're interacting with them that way. Same with the sanitarian. And if you agree on a certain time, please show up at that time and communicate what it is that the plan is ahead of time. And then, I wrote academic programming in your site supervisor, site coordinator, and us at CASE. Please communicate with us issues you have or things that come up. Don't hesitate to call or email me. I think you'll find me to be very responsive on email and on phone, so don't hesitate. And then just general professionalism in the workplace. So when you're on the observations or in the local health department, don't be texting your friends or on the phone if you don't need to be. And then the last thing we're talking about, and it's come up, is issues that arise while you're observing. So we talked about, Corba gave the example of the uncooperative person in charge. Personal safety is absolutely the most important. So if you do not feel safe, please remove yourself from the situation. And I would hope that this wouldn't happen, but if the sanitarian, him or herself, is doing things that make you uncomfortable, please remove yourself from the situation and talk to your site supervisor to handle it from there. There are going to be things that come up that we cannot anticipate and cannot warn you about. So just use a level-headed common sense, but it will happen, that things will happen unexpectedly.
That includes if, for some reason, the quality of the sanitarians driving causes you to feel unsafe driving with the sanitarian. Just talk it through either with your site coordinator or with us, and just figure out a way either to switch from that sanitarian or to drive separately. I think that can be finessed, but there may be that circumstance where you don't feel comfortable with the quality of driving the sanitarian demonstrates.
So just know that we're thinking about that, and we want to have feedback on what's going on, and we certainly hope and would never put you in a situation where we think that that's going to happen or anticipate that happening, but just given the how broad this project is and how many different places you all will be going and people you'll be interacting with, we can't, we just want to make sure you feel safe moving forward. Any questions?
All right. So I am very pleased with this today. We didn't know quite what to expect or how it would go. We do have evaluation forms that Michelle's in the back hoping I read them out. Please do fill those out. We're going to be down in Columbus next Monday doing a visit down there and teaching folks in central and southern Ohio the student observership things. So please give us suggestions that you think would improve the approach. I was a Cub Scout leader for many years, and in Cub Scouts we always asked people to give themselves a round of applause. Your day. Really enjoyed hearing your comments and seeing your wheels turn in your brains as you've begun thinking this project through and the possibilities and potential it has.
When do we start? When do we start?
Oh, good question. Explicitly, we've set March 1st as our goal for having people in the field, but we've also said, and this depends on getting our IRB back, which is well in process, by the way. That has to be back before anybody goes out, but it would be possible if people are interested to go out in pairs before the formal start on March 1st. So start talking with your site supervisor. We'll be talking with them as well, giving them some feedback about how today's session went as well. So I'm very excited. Great to have you all on board, and look forward to working with you over time.